In just 37 seconds, one of music's most legendary voices went from smiling guest to walking off set in fury, leaving Jennifer Hudson scrambling to salvage what became the most explosive episode in the show's history. Last night's episode started like any other, with Chaka Khan walking onto the stage wearing a stunning golden outfit that sparkled under the studio lights. The audience clapped and cheered as the Queen of Funk took her seat across from Jennifer Hudson. But what nobody in that audience knew was that within minutes, this conversation would turn into a battlefield, with harsh words flying back and forth until security had to get involved. The trouble started almost immediately when Jennifer began asking questions. She leaned forward with a big smile and said, "So Chaka, we need to talk about your iconic song, I'm Every Woman. Now, a lot of people actually think Whitney Houston sang it first. How does that make you feel?" Chaka's smile disappeared from her face, like someone had flipped a switch. She sat up straighter in her chair and looked directly at Jennifer. "Excuse me? How does what make me feel?" Jennifer kept that same smile on her face, acting like she didn't notice the change in Chaka's voice. "Well, Whitney's version became so huge, some people don't even know you did it originally. Does that bother you at all?" The audience got quiet. You could feel something changing in the air, like when storm clouds start rolling in before it rains. Chaka Khan took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice was calm, but had an edge to it, like a knife hidden behind silk. "Jennifer, let me make something very clear to you and everyone watching," Chaka said, pointing her finger slightly. "I wrote that song. I performed it in 1978. Whitney, God rest her soul, did a beautiful cover in 1992. That's 14 years later. I don't need to feel any type of way about facts. Facts are facts." Jennifer laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. It was the kind of laugh that makes you uncomfortable. "Oh, I know the history, Chaka. I'm just saying, sometimes the cover becomes more famous than the original. That's just how the business works, right?" Chaka's eyes narrowed. "The business? Is that what we're calling respect now? The business?" "I'm just keeping it real," Jennifer said, shrugging her shoulders like she didn't see what the big deal was. "Whitney took that song to another level. You have to admit that." "I don't have to admit anything," Chaka shot back, her voice getting stronger. "What I will say is that it's incredibly disrespectful for you to sit here and try to diminish my work. That song was my song, my creation. Whitney honored it beautifully, but don't you dare sit in that chair and suggest she made it better." The audience started shifting in their seats. Some people whispered to each other. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the tension building between these two powerhouse women. Jennifer tilted her head and gave Chaka a look that was definitely not friendly. "Chaka, I think you're being a little sensitive here. I'm allowed to have an opinion. This is my show." "Oh, is it now?" Chaka said, leaning back and crossing her arms. "Your show? So that gives you permission to disrespect legends who paved the way for you to even have a show?" Jennifer's face changed. The fake sweetness disappeared completely. "Legends? You think being a legend means you can't handle honest conversation? Maybe that's why your music hasn't been relevant in decades." The audience gasped, literally gasped out loud. Someone in the front row put their hand over their mouth. Even the camera operators seemed shocked, because the camera shook a little bit. Chaka Khan stood up from her chair so fast it almost fell over. "What did you just say to me?" Jennifer stood up too, and now both of them were standing, facing each other across the coffee table that separated them. "You heard me. I said what I said. You're living off past glory, and instead of being grateful that Whitney introduced your song to a whole new generation, you're sitting here acting bitter." "Bitter?" Chaka's voice got louder. "You want to talk about bitter? Let's talk about you sitting in this chair, forgetting where you came from. I was singing and performing before you were even born, little girl. I earned every single bit of my success through talent, hard work, and breaking down doors that were closed to black women in this industry." "Don't pull that card with me," Jennifer said, waving her hand dismissively. "I've worked hard too. I won an Oscar. I've had hit songs. I built this show from the ground up." Chaka laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh at all. It was angry and sharp. "Built this show? Baby, you stood on the backs of every woman who came before you. Women like me, Aretha, Patty, Gladys. We fought so you could sit in that comfortable chair and get paid millions to talk. And this is how you repay us? By trying to tear us down on television? Jennifer's face turned red. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. I don't owe you anything, Chaka. Just because you had a few hits in the 70s doesn't mean I have to kiss your behind every time you walk through that door. The audience was completely silent now. Nobody was clapping. Nobody was cheering. Everyone just watched with their mouths open as these two famous women went at each other. A few hits? Chaka's voice went up even higher. A few hits? I have 10 Grammy Awards. I've been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I am the Queen of Funk. And you will not disrespect me on this stage or anywhere else. You know what your problem is, Chaka, Jennifer said, stepping closer to the coffee table. You can't handle that someone else did your song better than you did. Whitney's version is the version everyone remembers. That's just the truth, and the truth hurts. That's when things really exploded. Chaka Khan picked up the glass of water that was sitting on the table next to her chair. For a second, everyone thought she might throw it at Jennifer. The audience held their breath. Security guards started moving toward the stage from the sides. But Chaka didn't throw the water. Instead, she set it down hard on the table, so hard that water splashed out over the sides. You want truth, Jennifer? Here's some truth for you. You're a talented singer, I'll give you that. But you're also an insecure, disrespectful brat who doesn't understand what it means to honor the people who came before you. You think because you have a talk show that you can say whatever you want. But what you're really doing is showing everyone watching that you have no class and no respect. Jennifer's mouth fell open. Nobody had ever talked to her like that on her own show before. Her face got even redder, and her eyes looked like they might shoot fire. Get out, Jennifer said quietly. What? Chaka said, putting her hand to her ear like she couldn't hear. I said get out, Jennifer shouted, pointing toward the exit. This is my show, and I want you off my stage right now. Chaka Khan smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who just won an argument. Oh, I'm leaving, sweetheart. Don't you worry about that. But let me tell you something before I go. You can have your little show, your little platform, your little moment in the spotlight. But you will never, and I mean never, have the legacy that I have. You will never be the icon that I am. And when people look back at this moment, they're going to remember that you disrespected a legend and showed your true colors. Security, Jennifer yelled, waving her arms. Get her out of here. 2 security guards started walking toward the stage, but Chaka Khan held up her hand. I don't need your security, Jennifer. I have 2 legs, and they work just fine. I can walk out of here on my own. Chaka turned to the audience, and her face softened a little bit. To all of you beautiful people in this audience, thank you for coming tonight. I'm sorry you had to witness this mess, but sometimes the truth needs to come out. Remember to respect your elders. Respect the people who paved the way, and don't let anyone dim your light. The audience started clapping, slowly at first, then louder and louder. Some people even stood up. They were cheering for Chaka Khan, not for Jennifer Hudson. Jennifer stood there on the stage, watching the audience applaud the woman she just tried to kick off her show, and her face turned from red to almost purple. Sit down, Jennifer shouted at the audience. Stop clapping. This is my show. But the audience didn't listen. They kept clapping as Chaka Khan walked across the stage with her head held high, her golden outfit still sparkling under the lights. She walked like a queen, because that's exactly what she is, the queen of funk, and nobody could take that away from her. Just before Chaka reached the exit at the side of the stage, she turned around one last time. Jennifer was still standing there, breathing hard, looking angry and embarrassed at the same time. Oh, and Jennifer? Chaka called out across the stage. One more thing. What? Jennifer snapped. Chaka Khan smiled that big, beautiful smile that she's famous for. Whitney didn't just cover my song, baby. She honored it. There's a difference. Maybe one day you'll learn what that means. And with those final words, Chaka Khan walked off the stage and out of the studio, leaving Jennifer Hudson standing there alone while the audience continued to clap and cheer for the legend who just schooled her on live television. Jennifer stood frozen for a moment, looking at the spot where Chaka had been sitting just minutes before. Her producers were scrambling behind the cameras, probably trying to figure out how to handle this disaster. The audience was still clapping, though some people were starting to sit down again, whispering to their neighbors about what they just witnessed. "Well," Jennifer finally said, trying to laugh it off, but her voice was shaking. "That was something, wasn't it?" Nobody in the audience responded. The clapping had stopped now, and people just stared at her with confused and disappointed faces. One woman in the third row shook her head slowly, like she couldn't believe what Jennifer had said to Chaka. Jennifer's assistant ran onto the stage and whispered something in her ear. Jennifer nodded, then turned back to the cameras with a forced smile that looked more like a grimace. "We're going to take a quick break," she announced, her voice still shaky. "When we come back, we'll have our next guest. Stay tuned." But everyone watching knew that nobody would care about whatever came next. The moment Chaka Khan walked off that stage was the moment this show became unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. Social media was probably already exploding with videos of the fight, with people taking sides and arguing about who was right and who was wrong. As the cameras cut away for commercial, Jennifer finally sat back down in her chair. She put her head in her hands for just a second before her team rushed over to her. But the damage was done. You can't unsay words like that. You can't take back disrespect like that. Especially not when you say it to someone who's been in the music industry longer than you've been alive. The whole confrontation, from that first question about, "I'm every woman," to Chaka Khan's powerful exit, lasted less than 15 minutes. But those 15 minutes would be replayed over and over again, talked about on every entertainment show, and shared millions of times online. Because when you disrespect a legend like Chaka Khan, the world notices. And when that legend stands up for herself and walks out with her dignity intact while you're left looking foolish on your own show, that's a moment that defines you, and not in a good way. Jennifer Hudson learned a hard lesson that night. You can have all the talent in the world. You can have awards, hit songs, and your own television show. But if you don't have respect for the people who came before you, if you don't honor the legends who built the path you're walking on, then none of that other stuff really matters. Chaka Khan proved why she's called a legend. Not just because of her incredible voice or her amazing songs, but because of how she handled herself when someone tried to tear her down. She didn't throw water. She didn't curse Jennifer out, even though she probably wanted to. She simply spoke her truth, delivered it with power and grace, and walked away with her head held high. That's what real legends do. They don't need to fight dirty. They don't need to scream or create chaos. They just need to remind you who they are, and everything else falls into place. As for Jennifer Hudson, well, she learned that having your name on the show doesn't mean you can treat your guests however you want. Respect is earned, and it can be lost in just 37 seconds. And last night, in front of millions of viewers, she lost it completely.